Welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Eugene Chan. With us is Dr. Rocky Tong, the newly appointed Executive Director of the Financial Services Development Council, or FSDC. A key member of the Council since 2019 and formerly its Director and Head of Policy Research, Dr. Tong has worked across capital markets policy, macroeconomic research, and regulatory analysis in Hong Kong and the region. He now steps into the role of steering the FSDC's next phase and will share with us what is Hong Kong's financial playbook going forward. Welcome back to Straight Talk, Rocky.
Thank you very much, Eugene.
Rocky, congratulations on the new role.
Thank you.
And we last had you on the show in June 2022. That's how time flies. We were in a very different financial climate then. And overall, how are we doing in comparison?
Thank you. In comparison, back in 2022, international investors were not really looking into investing in this part of the world. Mm-hmm. That was because of the situations back then. It was because of COVID. It was because of a lot of geopolitical uncertainties. Whereas now, back in 2025, Hong Kong's market has thrived, both in terms of raising funds for initial public offerings and also from trading. So I think it is a very different world comparing to where we were back in 2022.
Well, Rocky, when I used the title of the show, The Finance Playbook, it sounds very abstract. So what is it, and what are we trying to solve right now for Hong Kong?
In terms of our capital markets, for instance, Hong Kong has done very well. We have looked into bringing in more investors from around the world. We also want to bring in more issuers from around the world. As a matter of fact, we also want to broaden our arsenal. So in terms of intermediaries, in terms of investment instruments, we are also trying to broaden them. Now, how we are going to go about it is to base on a published report back in December 2025. It was a concept paper. It is almost one of a kind from our perspective, but that is almost a start. Mm-hmm. We want to use it as an avenue for us to engage with the market and to listen more. So up to today, we have already spoken to hundreds, around 500 of investors, intermediaries, and other professionals. And we are listening to them and see how we can add more strengths to our already strong capital markets.
Right. We're talking about financial playbook, meaning something that we can follow on and there's a plan to it. What will be the key pillars? And if I have to say, what are the top three priorities? I'm sure you've got many things you want to do. Mm-hmm. What will be the top three?
In terms of the top three, I would look at it this way. So in terms of broadening our market and make it a truly international market, we have to have issuers from around the world. That's one way to look at it. In terms of issuers, for instance, we have focused a lot on the Middle Eastern region. Mm-hmm. We have focused a lot on the ASEAN region. But when these companies are looking for a listing venue, they are looking for places with international money. So it's not only about Hong Kong or their original place. What we can do, and is very unique to Hong Kong, is our access to the southbound money from the mainland. Mm-hmm. So it is necessary for us to find ways to make it easier for our mainland investors to invest in these international companies. It's also necessary for us to think about how we can bring in more institutional monies. So we call it patient capital. Mm-hmm. What it is around insurance and also pension that we are aiming to bring more to Hong Kong. As we look at it, we realize that these investors are focusing a lot on the fixed income market. Therefore, we need to find ways to issue more bonds that are fitting for their purposes. The investment scope is really for long duration because, for instance, the insurance sector is hedging their risk, long-term liability, and as a result, if the Hong Kong SAR government, for instance, can lead the charge by issuing longer-term bonds, it would be conducive to the environment.
Yeah, thank you, Rocky. As we know that FSDC that you're heading right now is an advisory body to the government and to the financial sector. We had Secretary Chris Hui here recently, and he told us the finance industry accounts for 25% of GDP in Hong Kong, actually higher than before, but it only employs 8% of our working population. So will your playbook also try to increase not only the work itself, but even more workforce will be involved in this area? Would it be one of your aims as well?
Absolutely. Hopefully, in the next couple of months, we will be able to publish a paper on drawing more talent to the insurance sector. That is just one of those initiatives we are working on. The reason is that there is a lot of misconception about the insurance industry. It's not only about selling life insurance policies to the local sector, local population, but also the mainland Chinese population. But rather, insurance is a huge asset owner, and therefore, if we can provide them an avenue, provide them the full picture of how the insurance sector actually plays, that's very important. Now, more importantly, insurance is a risk management tool. Insurance can allow us to diversify risk. So we need people who understand the full of the insurance industry. Thereby, there is a necessary need for us to provide more programs for them, for instance.
Right, Rocky, I mean, as I always mention, you being the head of FSDC, I'm sure everybody will look for your directions. As the executive director, how would you define a win for FSDC? Because eventually you want people to listen to you. Would it be adoption of a policy recommendation by the government, or changing the market narrative, or even forging key international partnerships? What will be your own tick box for your having a win?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Eugene. In fact, the FSDC has a very strong board of directors that is led by Mr. Benjamin Hong. But we also have participants, top executives from various sectors. So it's really not defined by one person, but rather the whole of the executive board. Now, to us, a win is for us to be more apparent, in the construct of thinking about financial-related policies and matters. We hope to provide more useful advices to the government. It is already very useful because the government adapts roughly 73% of our recommendations throughout the years. But we want that number to go even higher. That shows the practicality of our suggestions. More than that, we also want to speak on behalf of the Hong Kong industry, not only here in Hong Kong, but also on the mainland and the other places. Right. So if we can do and carry out such functions more effectively, that should be a win.
Right. Rocky, I mean, I'm sure you produce some very good influential reports, but as you just said earlier, how can we ensure it becomes like what we call sort of blueprints for the action for regulators and even the industry to implement, that they're willing to do it? I mean, how do you ensure that?
Like I mentioned earlier, the 73% was a very proud moment for us when we learned that about 3/4 of our recommendations have been adopted. But it is not always the case, so we got to make sure that the industry understands what we are advocating for them, or on behalf of them. So what we have done in relation to the recently published paper that I highlighted earlier is a new approach. We want to launch a paper that is perhaps seen as an advanced draft, and then through our consultation with the industry, very wide consultation from different professional and industry bodies, the chambers of commerce, etc. We want to hear more from the frontline executives. Thereby, these people would be more informed. The government would be more comfortable with our suggestions. For that, these are not only our vision, but also practical implementation plans.
Well, Rocky, as I just said earlier, we had a recent interview with Secretary Chris Hui, and he mentioned that in the IPO pipeline, and also the liquidity appears to be quite strong at the moment. So from a perspective, what will be your top 2 or 3 actionable recommendations from the FSDC that you think should be accelerated to restore Hong Kong's equity markets dynamism, because we were very, very vibrant before. We're coming back, but how can we continue to do that?
Absolutely. In the last few years, we have done a lot in the Middle Eastern region, the ASEAN region. We want to expand our influence in the other regions too. One of the first trips that I will make in my current capacity will be to Indonesia.
I see.
I think Indonesia is a place where presents a lot of opportunities. We are going there together with my Vice Chairman, Mr. Daniel Fong, to meet with potential family offices that are considering places to establish another presence. We are meeting with a lot of Chinese companies who have the going out plans, who are considering whether or not they should be choosing Jakarta, for instance, as the place of operation in the Southeast Asia region. And at the same time, we can't forget about the old friends. Now, a lot of old friends, such as those in developed markets in the US and in Europe, are now thinking about where they should be investing. The reallocation of asset, reallocation of portfolio is something real that we have heard from the investment community. And for that, we also need to brush up our efforts in those regions.
Right. Time for a short break now. We'll be back with more Straight Talk. We are back on Straight Talk with newly appointed Executive Director of the Financial Services Development Council, Dr. Rocky Tung, and he has been sharing with us what's in the finance playbook for Hong Kong. So Rocky, in the first half, you told us more than 70% of your reports have been adopted by the regulators, which is fantastic news. That means all the work you have done has been very fruitful, and I'm sure that it contributed to our recent successes. But as we know, the government is trying to attract large corporations to operate here in Hong Kong. So what will be your value add there? Is it about crafting a better value proposition, or identifying target sectors, or improving the overall ecosystem for the C-suite decisions?
Thank you. So there are two main roles of the FSDC. One is to be a trust confidant, trust advisor of the Hong Kong SAR government, and the other is for us to advocate and build a good narrative of Hong Kong in front of our international client. So on the first part, what we have to do is really to construct the implementable solutions that are facing Hong Kong. What I mean is that there are a lot of international companies trying to be listed in Hong Kong and be on top of being operating in Hong Kong. And therefore, for us, we need to find ways to solve some bottlenecks. For instance, international companies who are currently only secondary listed here in Hong Kong are not eligible for investment from southbound monies, for instance. So this is something that we are looking at to see whether or not there are practical solutions to this, whether or not we can allow certain secondary listed companies to be eligible for Stock Connect scheme. Right,
Rocky, since you're on that matter, I'm just thinking, under one country, two systems is Hong Kong's real strength. I mean, what specific, so what can we say, financing of risk management solutions? Can we sort of offer multinational treasury centers that other places can't, because we are facing a lot of competitions elsewhere? I'm sure the viewers would like to know, apart from the so-called one country, two systems, what exactly are we being attractive compared to other centers? This is
a great question. In terms of our proposition as a potential corporate treasury center for international firms, the fact that we offer tax concession to companies using us as a corporate treasury center is already a very good start. We are halving the profits tax of corporate treasury center for eligible profit. So this is a good start, as I mentioned. But what is more important is that we are under one country, but the two systems allow us to facilitate capital flow seamlessly, either between the mainland and Hong Kong, or between Hong Kong and other jurisdictions. We are also allowing a lot of flexibility in terms of use of hedging tools. The use of different options and derivatives, it's very important for corporate treasury functions. The third bit is that the information flow between the mainland, Hong Kong, and the rest of the world is also seamless. It is necessary because these corporates using Hong Kong or choosing Hong Kong to be the corporate treasury center needs to have such access to information. So all in all, there are a lot of benefits of using us.
But Rocky, do you think the global corporates are receiving this messages clearly?
I think they are receiving it, but we are trying to brush up our efforts to advocate to them that these are the good functions via our trips to their countries or our encounters with them when they visit Hong Kong.
Because there's a saying among the Hong Kong community saying that Hong Kong government maybe in the past hasn't been a very good sort of marketing person. Do you think, are we doing it better right now?
I think that is an understatement of our strengths. So I think there are a lot of government agencies and key government officials doing wonderful jobs, both here in Hong Kong and, like in other markets. So we receive them with open arms, but then at the same time, there are a lot of ETOs, the Economic and Trade Offices. These officials representing Hong Kong have been engaging a lot of stakeholders for us. So we can't do it all, but we hopefully can leverage each other's strengths.
Right. Just now, I just remember you mentioned earlier in the first half, you were saying that you'll be going to Indonesia very soon, and you'll be meeting the ASEAN countries or the Middle Eastern new markets. But I like what you said. Don't forget our old friends. So how important are our old friends in the Hong Kong financial market right now? Because from the States, from the UK, from Europe, how important are they?
It is very important because Hong Kong, there's no doubt for us to be international. In Hong Kong, about two-thirds of our investment is coming from developed markets or international markets. So roughly 15% or so of our investment is from the domestic market, and then we have another 15% or so coming from the mainland Chinese market. And the rest of it really is from international markets that consists of not only developing markets that we mentioned, but also the US and Europe. In 2025, we have seen the return of investment from advanced markets. It is because of what a lot of people call the DeepSeek moment in January 2025, when the international world start realizing that AI is very advanced here in China. So this is a start, and we have to do more in luring some of those investors that are still not convinced that this part of the world is the investment destination.
Right, Rocky, maybe we move on another area on a subject that I've actually asked Secretary Chris on stamp duty. Because a lot of people in the market saying that we should abolish the stamp duty. But Chris said that we must keep the stamp duty. So what is your view on that? Because this is kind of, this debate has been going on, and obviously, personally, I think it's important that we have income. How would you break what we call the impasse and then inform the public what we are doing and why we need the stamp duty?
Stamp duty is a very important revenue stream of the Hong Kong SAR government. Without it, we must consider the other income stream. So from the financial sector perspective, it may be a good idea to remove the stamp duty, which is sometimes considered the transaction cost. Now, as a government is not only focusing on the financial services sector, but it has to manage the books very carefully. We don't want to introduce any other form of tax because that is going to make the living of the citizen here a little bit more complicated. We pride ourselves with a very simple and low tax regime, so this has to stay. Now, what we can think about in terms of stamp duty is that if we can introduce some new activities to Hong Kong, for instance, if we can introduce the market-making mechanism on single stocks to Hong Kong, these are new mechanisms, these are new activities. If we can utilize our stamp duty regime by lowering it or removing some of those stamp duty on market-making activities, for instance, this may be something that we can think about.
Right, Rocky, thank you for clearing that for the viewers. And one more area that we want to touch on before end of the show is you mentioned about insurance. We know that insurance is been doing quite well in the last few years. I met a lot of CEOs and they're very happy with the results. I mean, it is a massive employer and actually an investor. Do you see underappreciated strength of the Hong Kong's insurance industry? Do you see anything there?
I do believe that it is underappreciated. And that explains why back in March 2025, we've published a paper focusing on the strengths of our general insurance industry, on top of that of the life insurance industry. We are going to publish another paper on the talent landscape of the insurance industry. As I mentioned, we need to correct the misconception of the industry. We have to identify the areas of growth of the industry. And I hope that the general population will understand a little bit more about what good it brings to the entire community.
Right, Rocky, with that, I'm afraid I have to wrap up our discussion today. Thank you, Rocky, for sharing your insights with us. Well, Hong Kong has never been short on ambition, and what we have heard today is a city looking ahead with new ideas, new energy, and new opportunities. Have a good evening and see you next week.